And welcome to Positive Vibes. There we go. Get the mic a little closer. Welcome to Positive Vibes. This week's episode of Positive Vibes. Making positivity and gratitude louder in a podcast world. Sorry, my head was off somewhere else right then. Just a moment here. I just want to give a little shout out to, first off, I want to give a little shout out to Good Vibes Espresso. The similarity between the names Positive Vibes, my podcast, and Good Vibes Espresso. A local coffee shop, Good Vibes Espresso. I've been following them on following their page on Instagram for a while now, and I don't know, we connected on Instagram, and I forget exactly how. They might have liked one of my posts or followed me or something like that, and anyway, I started following them. Been wanting to get there and just say, hey, what's up, and get a cup of coffee for a few months now, and finally made it out there yesterday morning. And it was a great cup of coffee. Thank you, Sydney. And, it's, just a local coffee roaster, Delano's Coffee. That's what brand they serve, and it's excellent, and I've always liked it. And so that works out great, and it's just like, yesterday I gave them a shout out on, Instagram and Facebook, and, connected with them that way, became friends with a couple of people that are connected with them and on social media. And then I went back this morning to get some more Good Vibes Espresso, which I poured into my coffee cup here. Just an Americano with oat milk. Excellent. And it's like, just connecting with the community, be it locally. Well, I've been connecting with the community on both the large scale and the local scale here this week. I placed another ad on social media, and that's doing, seems to be doing excellent. Reached a lot more people than I thought it would that first couple days actually. And so at any rate, I'm just, amazed at, where that's going, right? Where that, how I'm able to connect with the worldwide community as well as the local community on social media and out in the world. It's just like, wow, it's cool stuff. I mean, I'm just speaking from my personal experience, coming from where I come from. It's just amazing. I'm just grateful for all of it. With that, I'm guessing I'm just going to continue reading out of my book here, my autobiography, Live the Passionate Life and Quit Settling for Survival. Let's see here. Where did I go? Stop. Oh, okay. I'll just go back a paragraph just to catch up. I went through a couple more jobs over the next 2 years, trying to get back into the work mode and bring some more money to the table. On my third night at one of those jobs, another restaurant where I washed dishes, the place was extremely busy with multiple high school sports banquets at once, me being the only dishwasher at the time. I got totally overwhelmed, and it seemed like every time I scrubbed one dish, 20 more dirty ones were brought into the dish pit. This went on for about 2 hours. The kitchen manager eventually came over to me and told me I was moving entirely too slow and just to get out of there. So I left. For the rest of the night and the next couple of weeks, I was feeling more depressed than usual. I felt like I was a total failure. My performance at work on my last night at that job totally sucked, and then it was thrown in my face as I was berated and kicked out the door. I tried to find a job I could do that was not as physically taxing as working in a restaurant, but to no avail. I even went to an agency of the state that supposedly helps people with disabilities find and keep employment, but I was sent packing. Apparently, I may have misunderstood the question when the guy speaking to the group of us newbies asked, "Is there anyone here who is not ready to go to work right now if I had a job lined up for you?" I raised my hand as I had a doctor's appointment to go to later that day. He said to all of us that raised our hands, "You can go then. We only work with people that want to and are ready to work now." So I just went back home and got back to the drawing board, racking my brain to come up with something I could do other than sit idly by while life passed me by. Sure, I was engaged and we had an apartment. I was clean and sober and had a spiritual connection to God. I was still going to meetings and being of service in the fellowship. I had many friends and a lot of family members. I could still ride my bicycle everywhere I went. I had so very much to be grateful for. Yet something big was still missing, and I could not put my finger on it. At the beginning of 1999, I was given an ultimatum by my fiancée. I was to have a job or at least a better source of income by July. This did not happen, so she left. I was devastated. I had tried and failed. I had tried a few different avenues and ran into dead ends. Now even the woman I wanted to spend my life with had left me. I could have given up, but giving up is just not something I would do. I took in a succession of roommates who did not work out for one reason or another, trying to save my apartment. At one point, though, I did help out a friend who was new in recovery and needed a place to stay. She found out she was pregnant when she was being seen for a checkup. She had a source of income, so she was always able to pay her share of the rent and bills, which was nice. We became very close friends. She opted to deliver her baby at home, and when the midwife came to deliver when it was time, I was the person whom my friend chose to cut her son's umbilical cord. There were about 10 or 15 of our friends there as well, including a friend of mine who had been crashing on my couch. My couch crashing friend was an avid photographer and had the night off from his job, so he was taking pictures of the event taking place that night. That night was definitely something awesome to experience, to witness a new life coming into the world and even being a participant in the process. Not too long after my friend gave birth to her son, she started going out with a guy and moved in with him. My resident photographer moved on along as well, his journey taking him elsewhere. Those two friends had always paid their portion of the bills, but other roommates did not. When I would be short of the full amount needed to pay my bills, my dad was always there to help me out. Toward the end of the year 2000, I let my pride get in the way of letting anybody know that I was in need of help. As a result, I ended up getting 3 months behind on all my bills and being presented with an eviction notice on the door of my apartment when I got home one day. I had 3 days to figure out what my next move would be. I had been chatting online with a lady for a few months, and we were hitting it off pretty well. I packed up a large duffel bag with clothes and some stuff I did not want to let go of, and went to be with this lady since it was my best option at that point, at least in my mind. I stayed with her for a short while, and we decided that it was not working out, and the best option was just for me to leave. A couple of days after I got there, it came about that she was also to be evicted from her place. Her best option was to move in with a good friend of hers. This plan did not include me, so I called my stepmom and asked her if there was any way she could help me out. Actually, back it up. There was a space in there. I ended up being being there with this lady, like, staying with this lady and being with her, like, I don't know, 2.5 months. So I don't know, there was a space in there. And I forgot to put that in here. Or just skipped over it. Anyway, her best option was to move in with a good friend of hers. This plan did not include me, so I called my stepmom and asked her if there was any way she could help me out. She was remarried at this point, living in Puyallup, Washington. I made it to her house, and I lived there for about 3.5 months, during which time I had gotten involved in the local 12-step fellowship. At the first meeting I attended in Puyallup, I met a beautiful young woman who was to one day be my wife. From the moment I first laid eyes on her, I sensed a connection to her. While I was living there in Puyallup, a bunch of people that went to the meetings I was going to were having a camp out about 30 miles to the south at a lake near Mount Rainier. I had bought a new $80 special mountain bike at Target. I picked up some cheap camping gear, tent, sleeping bag, camp stove, etc., with my stepmom's help. All of my friends were driving there, but being the crazy cyclist I am, I opted to ride my bike up to the campout. Here I was, a crazy cyclist, riding up toward the mountain on the shoulder of the highway, wearing a backpack that was stuffed with clothes, personal items, and food. On the rack which was attached to the back of my bike, I had saddlebags with more stuff and my tent, sleeping bag, and pillows strapped on top. I was set. Whoever says one can't go places and do things on a bicycle, my legs and my spirit beg to differ, since they tell a completely different story. I got about a mile from the campground when I took a break on the side of the road, not knowing that I was just about to my destination. One of my buddies, who was also going to the campout, came along in his truck and asked me if I needed a ride the rest of the way. Not knowing that I was almost there, I accepted the ride. That campout was so much fun. I didn't ride my bike around the campground at all, of course, since I had just cycled 30 miles of an uphill grade and did not feel like riding very far at all for a while. It was just really cool just to be in the forest, on a lakeside, just experiencing nature with friends, sitting around a campfire and chatting about life. A few of us did go swimming in the lake on our second to last day there, as it got really hot that day. I vividly recall that Jessica, who is now my wife, well, at the time this book was written and published, where was I at? She did not even recognize me after I had gone underwater and come up for air again. Since I had shaved my head completely bald in August of 1999, I had been letting the hair on the top of my head grow while keeping the sides and back shaved. I always wore my hair tied back in a ponytail. She had never seen me with my hair down, which was down to my shoulders. It was covering my face when I came out of the water. I remember her jumping, if only a tiny bit, as she was startled and not knowing who I was for a couple of seconds. Good times indeed. July has always been a busy month in my family, so far as birthdays are concerned. As a matter of fact, my stepmom's is on the 7th, and mine is the next day. This particular year was sort of special, as we had been apart and unable to celebrate our birthdays together for a few years. She got a big cake, plenty of soda pop and water. This is my stepmom. She got a big cake, plenty of soda pop and water, and set up a table for people to eat at while her husband barbecued. She let me invite a bunch of my friends, so I had about 20 of my friends over for the birthday party. Even Jessica's mom and sister were there. I had my tent still set up in the backyard, letting it air out after I had given it a post-campout cleaning. So Jessica and one of our friends joined me in the tent as we got out hemp, beads, and findings of all sorts and started making jewelry and dream catchers. Since we were at a party with other people there, we were not in the tent long enough to finish any of our projects, but we began them anyway. That birthday party was a fun event. We played games, had a barbecue, ate cake, and talked a lot, so everyone got to know each other better. More good times. About a week later, I was at a lunchtime meeting at the local 12-step hall and ended up going to their house up by Bonnie Lake, as I would be there to surprise Jessica when she got home from work. That is how I understood the plan at the time anyway. Actually, her mom and sister had both seen that we had become good friends and were attracted to each other, so they were just wanting to get us out of the social setting and get the whole relationship question out in the air. That night, Monday, July 16th, 2001, Jessica and I changed the nature of our relationship from friends to boyfriend-girlfriend status. And I am very grateful to say that we have been together ever since. Well, not now, but it was about we're not together anymore. It was about 4 months later that I proposed to her. She said yes, and we were engaged. We continued living there at Jessica's parents' house for 4 more years. At one point, Jessica and I, her parents, her sister and brother-in-law, and her brother and sister-in-law all lived under the same roof. In December 2001, I had an appointment to go in for my regular tri-monthly reapplication for benefits from the state. I missed it. It never came to my attention until I went to the pharmacy in January to get my monthly refills of my antidepressants, and my medical coupon had not been renewed. What was I to do? Well, it just so happened that I was at Value Village, the thrift store, sometime in January, and got an official t-shirt from the previous year's Seattle to Portland STP Bicycle Classic. For those who don't know, the STP is an annual event that has been taking place since 1979. At any rate, I got the t-shirt and was inspired to think I could actually do it. I happened to mention to my dad that I was going to do it. Somehow. A couple of weeks later, he called to invite Jessica and I down to his house the next Saturday. Jessica had a license and a car, so we drove down to his house on Saturday. I was surprised, to say the least, to discover that my dad had gone to performance bicycle in Tacoma and bought a 2002 Fuji Nevada mountain bike and all of the accessories a cyclist may need for an endurance ride. I was surprised to see that he bought me the bike and all the accessories needed and paid my registration for the 2002 STP, which was to take place on July 13th and 14th. That there was the third week of, this happened in the third week of February. Between then and July 14th, I put on 1,498.1 miles on my mountain bike, training for and completing the STP. My dad was working in the local area at the time and had weekends off, so he and his girlfriend were able to not only give me a ride to the starting line at Husky Stadium in Seattle and pick me up at the finish line in Portland the next day, but they met me at a couple points along the route. They even met me at the Riverside Park that was used as a campground at the halfway point in Centralia, Washington, with a tent and sleeping bag. As soon as the tent was set up, they took me to the Chinese restaurant, which was right next to the park, and made sure I got a filling meal. The next morning, about 6:30, they returned to get me going and to pick up the tent and sleeping bag. I did have a cycling partner whom I had met at the rest stop at REI in Kent, and I was surprised to see that she was not awake yet when I stepped out of my tent. Right as I was thinking I had to go wake her up, her friend and support team showed up to wake her. Her friend, who was her support team, showed up to wake her and collect her tent. She was not a newcomer to endurance cycling, as she had even met and ridden with Lance Armstrong at a couple of cycling events she had gone to when she lived in Texas. We kept pretty close to the same pace the whole way to Portland. I think I did well, especially figuring in the factor that I still smoked cigarettes at the time, and I was smoking at the rest stops along the route. The last few miles were on a steady incline, so it seems anyway. I do remember the tears that came running out of my eyes as I saw the finish line coming up, and I recalled that exactly 16 years earlier, I was being taken to the hospital after falling from the tree. I had been given a prognosis of being a vegetable, or at the best, being wheelchair bound, yet here I was crossing the finish line of the STP, having ridden my bicycle 200 miles to get there. That was a great feeling. Back to the topic of antidepressants. I have been without any of them since January 2002. When my medical coupon ran out, I couldn't get a refill, and almost right after that, I started cycling and exercising. Exercise and nutrition are my key, along with surrounding myself with a megaton of positive mojo. A month or so after I completed the STP, a good friend of mine gave me a car. Once again, I was given a car. This friend even took me to the licensing office and paid to have the title transferred over to me. The car was a 1986 Mercury Topaz that my friend's husband and their son had fixed up from pieces at a junkyard. Their son had gone into the U.S. Marines and had no use for the car anymore. They just wanted it out of their yard. This must have been a sign, right? I was talking to my dad about it, and he suggested the same thing that other people were telling me at the time. Go get your license. I told my dad what my thinking was on the topic, how I figured that my eye-hand coordination had been screwed up so bad by my brain injury that I did not trust my ability to drive a car. That was actually a belief based on erroneous thinking that had been in my mind so long it had become the truth to me. My dad brought it to my attention that if I had the coordination... Wait, back up. I'll keep my spot there, keep my finger on that so I can get back to it. All right, that sentence there, that was actually a belief based on erroneous thinking that had been in my mind so long, it had become the truth to me. Now, just this morning, right before I came into the radio station here, I was looking at Instagram on my phone. Tom Bilyeu, I don't know if you're familiar with him. Tom Bilyeu, he does impact theory, and he's got several other programs he does now. He's actually from here in Tacoma, and it would be amazing if I could have him on my show one day. At any rate, I was watching a video of Tom's on Instagram, and he was talking about repetition and how repetition, is very helpful, and repetition is magic, and something to that effect. And to paraphrase him, it's magic. And it's like, it's repetition, and I commented on his status, just relating the fact that, my life used to suck, and I just thought about everything negatively, and everything was going downhill, negative stuff happened, and I stuck with that. Just everything was down, depressive, and then I latched onto that word phenomenal that I heard from Eric Thomas, and I latched onto that. And as soon as people started asking me after I latched onto that word, every time anyone asked me how I'm doing, the answer would no longer be pretty good, I guess. The answer became phenomenal, and eventually it just seeped into everything. My thinking, seeped into everything. My thinking all the way to my life. Life is phenomenal, and anyway, just repetition. Just stick with that. At any rate, some things repetition, it gets old, so you got to switch it up. But, just, I don't know, latch onto the phenomenal stuff and repeat that. At any rate, my dad brought it to my attention that if I had the coordination to ride a bicycle to 200 My dad brought it to my attention that if I had the coordination to ride a bicycle 200 miles from Seattle to Portland, that I had more than enough coordination to drive a car. His analogy made perfect sense. I almost immediately went down to the local licensing agency and acquired a learner's permit. I began driving right away with experienced drivers in the car and was doing great at driving. It seems like I only had my permit for about a month, and I went down to the licensing agency, took the test, and upgraded to a driver's license. Why had I been so fearful of driving for so long? The answer may be that it was driven into my head by others and myself, probably more myself, that I was more messed up by the traumatic brain injury than I actually was, and I had thought that way for so long, it became the truth for me. What we focus on becomes our truth. About a month or so after I forced my mountain bike into semi-retirement and started driving my car, I got a letter in the mail from the Social Security Administration. The letter stated that they had approved my claim for supplemental security income. When a claim is approved, they go back to the date you initially applied and pay you from that date on. I had initially applied 7 years earlier and kept at it with the help of an attorney, so I was looking at a sizable chunk of back pay. While I was very grateful for the car I had been given, and it did not seem to have anything wrong with it at that moment, I thought I might like to have a little bit nicer car. So when I got the first chunk of money from the SSA, I bought a 1995 Chevy Lumina. I had initially gotten Jessica to come to the car lot to co-sign for me, figuring that I could build up some credit by making payments. But after thinking about it and talking with my dad, I went in the next day and just gave the guys a check to pay off the car. I'm glad I did that, because even though I may have built up some credit, I would have ultimately paid a lot more money than I needed to for the car. I only had that car for a couple of weeks when a job I applied for, a delivery driver position at Godfather's Pizza in Enumclaw, came through for me. One of my friends was working there and had told me at the open position. She said she put in a good word for me. It must have been a really good word, because I was hired within a week of filling out the application. I loved that job. I had lived in Enumclaw or the surrounding area for so much of my life. I knew the streets of the town like I knew my ABCs. The newer housing developments around town were my only troubling areas, but I had a Thomas guide in my car to take care of that problem. I even opted, and going on that, the Thomas guide, I'm not sure if, I could have even gotten a phone at that, back then, probably, but I was actually using Jessica's flip phone, and she was going without at the time. But at any rate, so that's why I needed the Thomas guide, was to look at the maps and refer to those instead of using, I didn't have a smartphone with GPS and all that. Didn't have a Garmin in my car at the moment. Yeah. I even opted to deliver pizza to addresses outside the boundaries of our delivery area, simply because it was good business and it made the customers happy, and I knew all the roads anyway. The biggest delivery that I remember doing was an order for 12 jumbo pizzas and 6 2-liters of soda pop. The call came in while I was out on a delivery, but I came through the door of the restaurant as the assistant manager was still on the phone with the lady. She asked me if I would take a delivery out to some dam, an actual hydroelectric dam, which is 16 miles from the restaurant. I said that I would take it without a second thought. I drove for about half hour to get there, but I came up to the locked gate at the dam and parked. I waited for about a minute and was just about to use my cell phone to call the lady who had ordered the pizza when she drove up to the other side of the gate. She opened the gate and told me to come park next to her car, which I did. She signed the credit card slip, and I transferred the pizza and soda pop into her car. I asked about the large order out of curiosity, and she explained that they were having an employee party that day. Right before she got into her car, she told me that she would have given me more of a tip, but the tip that she did give was all that her boss would authorize. When she had signed the slip, I just put it in my pocket without looking at it and smiled at her, and told her, "Have a great day." I should have waited until I got back to the restaurant to look at the receipt, because I was flabbergasted as I pulled the receipt out of my pocket as I was driving. I saw that the lady had given me a $50 tip and almost swerved off the highway into a pasture full of cattle. A $40 tip, pasture full of cattle. This is Enumclaw, people. And almost swerved off the highway, and a $40 tip was very good. 50. I don't know why I said 40 here in the book. A $50 tip was very good, even though the order totaled nearly $200. People usually tipped well, but not that generously. Needless to say, that was a very good day. I already said it, but I really loved that job. I was making and cooking pizzas and other food items in the restaurant and then delivering them to people out in the community. So I was essentially doing them a service, hence the term food service, and getting paid for it. Plus, I got to be outside, whether out on deliveries, placing coupons on people's doorsteps, or pacing the shoulder of the highway in front of the restaurant while wearing a sandwich sign. Yep, that was me out there. I even got to meet and work alongside a guy who is now a big name in country music. The general manager we had at the time. Okay, well, I couldn't say in the book here because of the copyright and liability and all that. I don't know, but I'll just say it here on my podcast. Where was I? Oh yeah, I even got to meet and work alongside a guy who is now a big name in country music, Blake Larson. Yeah, he's from the area there, and he started working at Godfather's, and then we helped him. Once he started getting into this, promoting his music more. He put on at least one, maybe multiple live shows there at Godfather's. It was so cool. Super busy those nights. I know I was there on a couple of them. He was working in the kitchen for a day or two before he quit doing that and started playing music on Friday and Saturday nights at the restaurant. Working on those nights was a royal pain in the butt since the restaurant was full of people. I mean, cram-packed, like standing room only, and trying to move around there, pain in the butt. I'm not saying that every table in the restaurant was full the whole time, but the rest of the dining room was full of people standing wherever there was room. While it was very hard to pass through the dining room, taking and coming back from deliveries, it was still exciting, and I'm grateful to have been a part of that. At one point, I was our restaurant's only delivery driver for about a month. One of the other two drivers was out because her eardrum burst while taking off in an airplane, and the other guy broke his thumb while doing yard work. His whole hand had a cast on it, and he needed that hand to shift gears with. I ended up putting in 29 days straight, mostly open to close. I was totally worn out at the end of that month, to say the least. Toward the end of my stint as a pizza delivery driver, I had grown weary of what I was doing and wished to spread my wings a bit. A friend of mine had heard me voice my wishes to find another job, and he said he may have a position for me doing deliveries out of Seattle. Oh, hey, good morning, Ron. My friend Ronald, he says, good morning, Shane. I'm at mile 8. So right on, Ronald. Keep on running, buddy. Wish I was there in Puyallup running the anthem, running with the Anthem All Stars. Good morning, Vika. Yeah, just looking over at my comments on Facebook Live here. Got friends chiming in here. Well, they probably, a little while ago. But anyway, good morning, guys. And good morning, everyone else. But at any rate, getting back to this, I told my manager at Godfather's that I may be getting another job and that it may start within the next few days. And she said she was cool with that. She had hired on a couple more delivery drivers so she would not be left high and dry. The next day, as I was slicing vegetables in the kitchen at work, I heard the door chime go off, indicating that somebody had entered the restaurant. The manager was in the back room taking inventory before she placed an order for supplies. Knowing I was the only employee available, I turned to visually verify that someone had in fact entered the restaurant. At that moment, the knife slipped at an angle and went into the side of my ring finger. The manager ended up coming to help the customer who had just come in, while I proceeded to wash my hands and wrap a thick wad of paper towels around my hand that was cut. It was a bad cut, so I drove myself to the hospital, which was only about a mile away. The waiting area at the emergency room was packed. It was taking quite a while to be seen. I was outside smoking a cigarette at one point when my friend called me about the position in Seattle and said I could start the next morning. Good timing, huh? I had clocked out of work before I went to the hospital, so I just called my boss and told her the news that I had gotten the job in Seattle and would be starting the next day. She was totally cool with that. I went back into the waiting room and sat down for the next 30 minutes or so before a nurse finally came to get me. Ultimately, it took 6 stitches to seal up my finger. The next morning, my finger was throbbing, but the doctor and the nurse at the hospital had fixed it right up between the stitches and even thick bandaging. Nonetheless, I drove to Seattle to start my new job, driving a 1-ton delivery truck all around the Puget Sound area and delivering bar supplies. My first day was my one training day, so I just rode around all day while another guy drove the truck, and I helped him unload the orders and get them inside their destinations. From the second day onward, I was on my own. Fortunately, I had my Thomas guide to rely on for showing me exactly where my deliveries were going to and how to get there. Having lived in the Puget Sound area for the entirety of my life, I had been all over and knew how to get to the towns I was going to. I just used the Thomas guide for navigating streets and addresses within the towns I had only passed through. When it came down to it, after my first couple of days of getting used to driving that big truck, I loved that job more than delivering pizza in my hometown. I had always had an adventurous spirit, so being able to drive all around in different places all the time was really cool. I was not delivering to new places all the time, but I would deliver to different sections of Puget Sound every day of the week. Every day of the Puget Sound area. On Mondays, I would deliver to the north, sometimes as far as Mount Vernon. On Tuesdays, I would deliver to the south, so far as Olympia and over on the Olympic Peninsula, if anyone over there needed anything that week. Wednesdays were designated as local days, and all of my deliveries were in Seattle that day. Thursdays were for going to the east as far as the town of North Bend, which is only 26 miles from Snoqualmie Pass, one of the gateways to eastern Washington. Fridays were used for local deliveries and any emergency orders that got called in that I could feasibly fit into my routing for the day. It was a cool job, and I had even become acquainted with the owner of the company. He opted to cut off the delivery portion of the business, for reasons unknown to me. The day before, I would have had 90 days of working there. At 90 days, an employee is eligible for company-paid medical insurance. Bum deal, huh? I went upstairs to the office of the guy that took care of all the delivery accounts. I expressed my concern, and he said not to worry, that he had spoken to a guy in Everett whose company was going to take all of the delivery accounts, but he needed us to as well. The two of us as well. Sorry, just checking on the time there. He wanted to hire us because I knew where all the deliveries were, and this other guy had built a strong business relationship with the people. It was nice being wanted like that. I did have to drive 30 more miles to work in the morning and 30 more to get home at night, but I had a job. I was driving a total of about 140 miles just commuting to and from work, plus driving all around all day at my job. It was getting to be too much, even after he did get a warehouse in Seattle, cutting my commute in half. I was just getting tired of driving so much. At one point, he had hired another driver, and this other guy needed to get some extra hours, so I was given 2 weeks off. During those 2 weeks, I did some searching and found a job in Auburn, only about 18 miles from my house. It was a position with a company that sends out ad circulars. Yeah, you know the ones I'm talking about. You know those annoying bunches of weekly ads for local stores and restaurants that you get in the mail? As I often describe them. The ad circular, I don't know. Anyway, the ad circulars you get in your mailbox, it goes pretty much straight to your garbage box. Yeah. Anyway, at this job, I worked as a strapper. There was a machine that put together the ad circulars one piece at a time along a conveyor belt. At each station along the belt where the pieces were automatically fed in stood an employee whose job it was to verify there was a standing pile of those pieces and that section of the machine was running smoothly. I worked at the last station on a belt, and used a machine to strap bundles of ads together. It was a position working the swing shift, 3 p.m. to 11 p.m., with the last day of our work week ending whenever that week's work was done and the warehouse was cleaned. I had been working there for almost 3 months when, on my way home from work one night, I was in a car accident. Okay, I got time to do this paragraph. It's about a page and a half, but it's a paragraph. Anyway. It was the last day of working for that week, and I had clocked out at 1 a.m. on the 1st of July. I was traveling southbound in the right-hand lane of Auburn Way, a 5-lane road. I know I was going exactly 40 miles an hour because I had just set my cruise control a few blocks before. I was driving along, and all of a sudden a 93 Dodge Ram pickup truck, which had at least a 6 to 9 inch lift on it, came out of a tavern's parking lot and onto the road right in front of me. I had no time to react whatsoever. I had no option other than hitting their truck. I T-boned their truck, well, actually no time to come up with options. I T-boned their truck right along its front axle line. My car ultimately spun to the right, and its front bumper was about 6 inches from hitting a fire hydrant. Their truck ended up hitting a wooden power pole and cracking it. My windshield shattered and my airbags went off. At the time of impact, my head did get jostled a bit as my head was going forward at the same time the steering wheel airbag was inflating toward me and strongly bumped it. Yeah, and hit it hard, it seemed like. When my car came to rest, I had the sense to get out of my car. I remembered that after Jessica and I had been in a wreck previously I think it was her mom's car she was driving at the time. The EMTs who were on the scene told us that if we were able to get out of the car as soon as possible to avoid too much exposure of the gases that were emitted by the airbags. As I was getting out of the car, I was reaching into my fanny pack to get out my cell phone and call 911. At the same time, someone yelled out from the crowd of people out in front of the tavern, where the other vehicle came from to cause the accident, "Don't worry, we just called 911. They're on their way." So I just continued pulling up my phone and called Jessica, letting her know what had happened and that I was probably going to need a ride home since my car was not moving at all. I felt fine at the scene, just a little shaken up. Actually, like quite shaken up, I guess. Maybe a little more than a little shaken up. I was pretty much in shock, I guess, looking back on it. Here I was, back in the parking lot, away from the road, smoking a cigarette. I had lit up when I was standing by my car, but I noticed something leaking from my engine compartment, so I stepped back quite a ways for the sake of safety. Anyway, here I was, calm and collected and smoking a cigarette when all the police, EMTs, and firemen arrived. And a cop comes up to me and asks, "Excuse me, sir, were you the one driving that car?" I replied, "Yes, I was. Oh yeah, I forgot. Just a sec, I'll be right back." I proceeded to stomp out my cigarette, run to my car, and open the door on the driver's side. I knelt on the seat cautiously as there were shards of glass all over. I reached over and flipped up the passenger side airbag, opened the glove box, and got out my insurance and registration documents to show the police. When I got back to where I had been standing when he showed up on the scene, I showed my driver's license and other documents to the police officer. As I was holding them out to him, the first words out of his mouth were, "Actually, sir, we could have waited on those. I am just totally surprised that you are standing here talking to me." Looking at the car, as we pulled up, I was certain the driver would need to be transported to Harborview Medical Center in Seattle or the morgue. I stood there and talked with the officer while the passengers of the truck were being checked out by the EMTs. While I was waiting for the scene to die down and for Jessica to arrive, I was constantly thinking how I wanted everyone to just hurry up so I could get home because I was really tired and hungry after work. Besides being hungry and tired at the moment, we had plans to go to a get-together with friends in the morning. Two tow trucks came and towed both vehicles. Jessica showed up and we went home. What a magnificent start to the day. I said we had somewhere to go in the morning. It actually was morning, so in a little while. We woke up at about 10 o'clock and went down to the wrecking yard in Auburn where my car had been towed to. I got all my stuff out of my car, and before we left, I noticed that the truck I had hit was a few feet away. I walked over and looked under it out of curiosity, and the front axle was broken. It had a crack running through the middle of it. It was not just a minor crack either. Both sides of the axle were angled away from each other. My car was totaled, and their truck needed at least a new front axle to even move. We took my things, which I had received from my now defunct car, and dropped them off at home before heading out to the event we were going to. It turned out to be a very good event. Some friends of ours had a campfire potluck at their property up in Eatonville, which is not too far from Mount Rainier. It was cool to see a lot of people I had not seen for some time. Plus, I love food and campfires are a bonus. Yeah, and I'm running real short on time, so I guess I'll stop there. Yeah, because that'll take a little longer than 2 minutes to read that. Yeah, I'll leave it right there for right now in my story. Get back to that next week. But I would like to just to give, these yesterday and today, is my experience, going to, having followed Good Vibes Espresso on social media for a while now, and getting familiar with them, their coffee, what they do, and all that. They're good vibes. It just felt like, yesterday morning I woke up and felt it was the right thing to do. I needed to go there and get a cup of coffee. And so I did. And, before I went and before I went over to my mom's and visited with her for a while, went over there, got a coffee, and, just spreading love and good vibes in the community, if you will. yeah, it's just awesome and it feels great. Just to, be an active member of the community, not just be a passive member of the community. And, watching the community move around me, and actually getting out there and moving in the community, moving around in the community. Yeah, that's about where that is. And it's about that time. So I'm going to wrap it up, and I'm just going to say, stay kind, optimistic, and grateful, and have a phenomenal day and a phenomenal week. And I'll catch you next Sunday at 8 a.m. Pacific right here on VT Radio Universal. And with that, I'm out. Ciao.